morning, Professor Raghav. First and foremost, thank you so much for giving us, allocating some time to talk to our students about your career as an entrepreneur, as a professor, and as a teacher to us.
It's my pleasure.
So the first question that we have for you is, can you please describe your experience as the founder and CEO of a series of venture-backed information technology companies?
Yes, I spent 15 years organizing, starting, raising seed capital, A-round capital for venture-backed companies. And the one that sticks in my mind, of course, the most is the first one that I did, because I had no business experience. I was right out of school. I had an idea for a company while I was a graduate student. I was in law school, and somehow I needed to learn how to write a business plan, learn how to recruit people to come join me, although I had no money at that time, and go out and raise enough capital that we could build a software system along the lines that I was imagining. And all of this took a lot of determination. It took a lot of tolerance for rejection. I think I made 42 venture capital pitches to investors before I had one say, yes, we will invest. And it took about 7 months to raise the first round of capital. At the time, I thought that that was an awful lot of investors and an awful lot of time. But looking back, I actually think that was pretty typical of what it takes to do an A-round financing for a new venture. So I had not in the past thought that I wanted to be focused on business, but I had an idea for a better type of search engine. It involved some new algorithms and some new inventions that were patentable and which I filed patents on. And it slowly began dawning on me that if I did not start a company, no one would, that there was really no way to commercialize these ideas unless I built a company myself and raised enough capital to demonstrate that the ideas worked. People would not take my word for it. You know, initially I thought, oh, I have obviously this system as described in my patents will work, therefore my patents should be worth a lot of money to some big database company. That turned out to be quite unrealistic. If they had the imagination to see how the system might work in the future, they would not be a large corporation with large corporate culture, right? Yeah. To do things like that, you must be in a startup. Eventually I raised capital. I found wonderful people who agreed to work for me for no money down. My patent lawyer, Aldo Noto, I met him in 1993, and he's still one of my best friends. I just went to his 50th birthday party last weekend, wow. And we've stayed friends the whole time. I found a wonderful person to be my chief technology officer. And essentially the experience was that you need to inspire people, that people are only partially motivated by money. They're motivated by a wish to do something new, creative, exciting, transformative, especially if they have an engineering background. They want to work on something difficult and novel and not overly repetitive. And so I found ways to reach and motivate people and create a team. And we built some beautiful software products that were way ahead of their time. Our biggest challenge with that first company was people simply did not understand in the early and mid 1990s how big the internet would be. And our search tools were designed to do filtering and prioritizing of search results for very large data collections. So for example, Graham Spencer, who was the founder of Excite, which was a public search engine at that time, said to me, well, we love your technology, but in order for it to really be of commercial value, there'd have to be 1 billion web pages.
That's true.
It's like, at that time, there were about 100 million web pages. So I learned a lot about timing. It's possible to run out of money by being too early into a market. Even if you're right at the wrong moment, it can be very difficult. And I've had the experience of being too early several times, so that seems to be a personality trait of mine. I tend to see the future very clearly, but I don't always see how many intermediate steps there are between where we are and where we need to be. So I've come to appreciate that although I do tend to be right, I'm not always right about timing. And one of my very wise investors told me that it is worse to be too early than too late. And I definitely have experienced that. The technology that I developed, that first patent that I filed in 1993, was not fully monetized in the sense that the patents were licensed to Google and for Bing and for AOL and so on until just 2 years ago.
Wow.
So that gives you a sense of sometimes of how long you have to wait before the real value of something is appreciated. But in any case, my first venture convinced me that there was nothing more exciting than the internet and the emergence of really powerful personal information technology tools that an individual could have on their laptop, the power that once belonged only to a large government.
Yeah.
And every 2 years or so, the cost of storage has dropped by about a factor of 10. Processing power has doubled. And so there's always something new you can do that was previously too computationally intensive. And so this is the excitement for me. There's always something new to do. So first it was analysis of text, then analysis, for example, of photographs. Now you can do real-time analysis of video. All of this becomes possible because of huge improvements in processing speed and huge reduction in cost. And so I've just ridden that wave for 20 years, and it remains incredibly exciting to me.
Thank you, Professor Egor. Could you just expand a bit about working in a startup? Because this is a time when like students are looking for internships. So how would you say that a student can leverage working in a startup as compared to working in a big firm?
Well, there's clear pluses and minuses working in a startup versus a big firm. And I think of the example of when I was a law clerk, and I would see these small, not-for-profit law firms, public interest law firms. And they would have the young person who was maybe 2-3 years out of law school. He'd be sitting on one side of the courtroom. And on the other side, you'd have the large corporate law firm where you'd have the senior partner, the 2 junior partners, and the 4 associates, and the person who was the same age and had gone to probably just as good a law school as the public interest lawyer would be maybe allowed to carry the briefcase with some of the backup documents, and definitely would never open their mouth in the courtroom. And what I saw from that is sometimes it's the small, undercapitalized organizations, or minimally capitalized, where you get substantial responsibility very quickly. And that's what's great about startups. They never have enough people. They're always trying to do too many things. And therefore, if you are competent, you will be given major, substantial responsibility very, very quickly. And the learning is extremely rapid. That's the good thing. The bad thing is that most startup companies run out of money eventually. So you're likely to need to probabilistically speaking, you will need to change your job, right? You might be in the 1 in 10 that is a huge success, but realistically, you probably won't be. However, if you have technical skills, software development skills, database skills, data scientist, data analytics skills, no one holds the lack of success of a venture you worked at against you. Your skills are completely transferable. So particularly in Silicon Valley and in the US venture culture in general, it's perfectly acceptable to have worked at a company that failed. And in fact, if you look at the resumes of top people in Silicon Valley, they've effectively, all of them, have had at least one experience of a venture that ran out of money or was otherwise didn't live up to its potential. So even the downside is not that far down for people with technical skills. You'll learn a lot, and you may just need to jump after a couple years.
Okay. The next question that we have is, could you please share your personal experience and how you arrived at a decision to become a professor at Duke?
Oh, sure. So I had always thought that I wanted to be a teacher. And when I first came out of university, I thought I will go to graduate school and get a PhD and I will become a professor. And I tried going to graduate school. I did a semester in graduate school in philosophy at Ludwig Maximilians University in Munich, in Germany. And I was headed for that path. And I realized that I felt if I was going to be a teacher, I needed to teach more practical things. I did not want to be one of those very theoretical teachers who teaches very abstract ideas. I found it ungenerative for me. It's good for some people, but it was bad for me. I realized quickly I was going to be very unhappy. And so I thought I'd better go out and get some practical skills and knowledge, because that's the kind of teacher I want to be. And so I always had in my mind that I wanted to be a teacher. But then one thing led to another, and I spent 10 years doing ventures and doing companies before I took a teaching job at Duke. I started out as entrepreneur in residence in the undergraduate business certificate program at Duke, the markets and management program. They hired me as entrepreneur in residence to work with students 1 day a week. That was in 2003. And I did that for 5 years. There was a 5-year grant to support that. I loved that. I taught the undergraduate, the senior capstone course, business plan development course in the markets and management program. That program, while I was there, became the most popular undergraduate major at Duke.
Wow.
The students were great. It was exciting. I loved it. I was also working full-time. And I was interested in teaching full-time. And so in 2008, because that was ending, I started looking around for full-time teaching positions. And I knew about the MEM program because I had come over and given guest lectures in finance and in, you know, how to start a company kind of things. And so Jeff Glass and Brad, they knew me. But I heard they were looking for a full-time person who would be able to teach finance-related courses on the investment side, like to teach investments and derivatives and so on. And they were also open to my teaching other things, information technology, entrepreneurship, and use of computers to analyze massive databases, which was my main area of expertise. And so I came over and interviewed, and I just really, really liked them. I really liked the program, and I had looked at teaching at business schools, regular MBA programs. I realized I want to be at the engineering school. These are my people.
I understand.
These are I have a fundamental cultural alignment with engineers. I like to build stuff. I am not so interested in theory. I am interested in building stuff, and I want to teach and work with people who are also interested in building things. And so I started working here full-time in 2009, January 2009, and I've been here 5 years, and it's been fantastic. I've loved it. It's been a wonderful career change, and I hope I can just keep on doing it for a long, long time.
That's wonderful to hear, Professor Raghu. Our next question is, what has surprised you most about us MEM students?
So what surprised me the most is how MEM students don't let you know right away how much they know and how smart they are. A lot of them come from other countries and cultures where you don't talk a lot in class, and where asking a question even of the professor might be seen as perhaps rude. And so at first I thought maybe these students aren't so well trained, or they're not so smart because they don't challenge me, they don't engage, you know. But gradually I learned over time, as they trust you more, as they come to realize that you will not be defensive or judge them if they challenge you or ask you a question. And they get more of a sense of what US style norms are for seminar interaction. Then you start to find out how smart they really are and how much they really know. And it's incredible the caliber of students we are getting now. I just did a series of interviews. I just did 25 interviews with students who are accepted for next year.
Okay.
And they are all at absolutely top universities in India, China, and comparable elsewhere. And we are able to recruit worldwide. So we have a cultural challenge because people come from different backgrounds, but this is also the incredible strength, is we literally recruit our class from the entire world. So this is why our best students are as good as the best students anywhere.
Thank you, Professor Ega. That was really enlightening. Our next question is, if a student finds your courses challenging, what advice would you give him or her to overcome the challenges and to utilize these classes better?
Yes. So sometimes I have students who they seem to get a little bit scared in my classes. And when you're scared, it's hard to be the most effective. Like being scared all by itself doesn't necessarily motivate you to do a good job. Students who come and talk to me and say, I'm having difficulty with this particular thing or that particular thing, I can almost always either figure out right then what it is they don't understand and explain it some new way, which seems less hard, and then it's like, oh, I understand that. I just knew it in different words. Or I can find them tutor or find them help. The students who get into trouble are the ones who don't ever ask for help. They wait until the end, and they just are scared, and they just sort of withdraw from the challenge. But you know, my office hours are open. People can walk in my door anytime. And students who come and see me on a regular basis outside of class never do poorly in my classes. Never. Because I make sure that they don't. I make sure they have the tools they need, because you know, they're all smart. They wouldn't be at the MEM program. They can all succeed.
That's true. Thank you, Professor Ega. Our next question is, how do you think having a person with an MEM degree in a company is profitable to the company?
So I can really relate to MEM students because I am someone who has some technical background. I studied, although I was a philosophy major undergraduate, I also studied applied math, and I took math courses in graduate school. So I have some technical background, but also communication skills, and I like to talk to people. And what I tell MEM students is that if you are a translator, and you can translate the needs of the business people, you know, the people who wear the suits and the front office people. If you can translate their needs into technical language so that the technologists can understand it, and you can translate what the technologists are trying to say. Like, for instance, building ABC is physically impossible, but we could achieve the same result if you would tell the client that we could do DEF. Translating that into language that the suits understand. That acting as a mediator and a translator in a company is an incredibly valuable role. And the truth is, there are lots of extroverted people who look good in suits who can go out and do selling. And there are lots of hardcore technicians who sit in the back room and code day and night. But there's very few people who can go between and do both.
That's true.
And those people are priceless in a company. They're the people that in the end drive innovation in a company.
Yes.
Because they bring in information from the outside world into the technology group, and vice versa. So those are your Steve Jobs type people, right? So MEM is wonderful training to act in that kind of intermediary, one foot in both worlds role, which personally I think is the most exciting and rewarding way to be working in a technology company.
That's wonderful. Like the fact that we can commercialize any product that is being created, I think that is what motivates us to like take up the MEM program as students. So shall we move on to our next question?
Sure, sure.
So the next one is, as an entrepreneur and the director of the Center for Qualitative Management, what advice would you give MEM students to search for summer internships and to approach career after graduation?
So, so I tend to work with a subset of MEM students who are comfortable with computer programming. Either they came into MEM with some programming skills, or they're able to learn some basic programming skills quickly. And they're interested in data analytics and working either in the financial sector or in some other sector, but effectively as either building IT systems or analyzing information in order to improve business processes. I'm happy to talk to all MEM students, but those are sort of the students who seem to come to me, ask for advice, take my classes. They're the ones that I get to know the best. Okay? Luckily, having those skills right now are extremely valuable. Companies are very short-handed with people with those skills. So if you can demonstrate that you have a combination of data analytical skills and basic, not super hardcore, you don't need to be writing device drivers, but you understand what Java is, how to write a program in Java, understand something about databases and how to do a database query, and you have the soft skills and communication skills, management skills, you can definitely get a job. We have a challenge at MEM that a lot of times companies in the United States don't know how prestigious and hard to get into the universities are that our students went to before Duke. So they say, well, that's great that you went to Duke, but we don't know how to evaluate your previous work.
That's true.
So I see this as the biggest challenge. And actually I had one student who I sort of urged them to put on their resume, what percentage of students who apply, who take the entrance exam, are accepted at your university. Because it's the most difficult to get into university, say in the US, the acceptance percentage might be 3%, 4%, 5%. And many of the universities our students go to take, 100 students out of 200,000. It's a completely different scale of difficulty. So communicating this is really important because people hiring in the US are just not as familiar. But they should be, because sometimes they're missing great talent because they're not as well informed. As we move to a more global world, understanding what the equivalent of Duke and MIT and Harvard are in other countries is going to be a requirement for a human resources manager.
That's true. What do you like best about Durham? So what do you think is the best thing about Durham?
Well, so there's many wonderful things about Durham. I've lived here for 20 years. One of the things I've always loved about Durham is that I love to go hiking and I love to go walking in the woods, and I love to take my kids out mountain biking and go mountain biking. And there's many places you can do that are 15 minutes from my house, And when I used to live in Washington, D.C., you would have to drive for hours to get anywhere that wasn't paved and full of people, it felt like. And here I can drive for 15 minutes and be in completely remote woods and walk along a stream and ride really challenging mountain biking trails. I have friends who we go mountain biking different places around the state, and there's beautiful, beautiful trails all over North Carolina, and I've ridden mountain biking trails all over here. So I love that, and the weather is good for doing outdoor activities all year round. So for me, going out in the woods and having time in nature and by myself and in quiet and so on, that's what restores me. So Durham is perfect for me in that way.
Just one last question. So you've been at Duke since 2009. So if you were to pick one memorable moment in the past 5 years, which one would that be?
Oh, there are so many. There are so many. Well, so I think what's Oh, that's a hard question because there's just too many great things have happened.
Maybe the few best that you would like to recall at this
moment. So, well, okay. So, you know, we do every year, we send a team to the Rotman trading competition. This is a trading simulation that happens in Toronto, Canada. And I was just looking this past weekend at photos from the different Rotman competitions, and it's incredibly exciting because you're suddenly in a group of several hundred people, all of whom have done some basic training in how to be part of a trading floor. And there are simulations there that are like an old-fashioned commodities trading pit, like they have in Chicago, where people, it's called open outcry, where people are shouting the bids and the prices and stuff. And it was great to see our students who tend to be kind of quiet and reserved, they put on that trading code and all of a sudden they're like, buy 250, buy 200. It's just, it's great to see them get out of their, not just get out of their familiar zone, but to really love getting out of it and realize they can do things they never thought they could do.
That's wonderful, bro. I mean, like, one last question, and this is totally optional. So, what do you think of The Wolf of Wall Street?
I haven't seen the movie, so I can't tell you too much about that. I do know, having worked in finance, that people are not always very nice, Something I really love about teaching is that there's no profit motive in teaching. No one teaches for the money. And so everyone who is involved in teaching does it because they have different values. And the values in our MEM program are really values of, if you think about who our professors are, they all have 10, 15, 20 years of experience at the cutting edge of technology development and commercialization. They could do anything they want. They're very successful. They could retire, they could go live in Hawaii, or they could go work in senior positions in private industry, and they choose to work with our students. And why is that? It's because they have completely different values than pure corporate profit maximization values. We teach about business, but we have a different ethical perspective, and the values of the people here are really on giving back and on sharing and on. The way I look at it is that we are here to empower people to achieve their dreams and their visions, which they may not even fully understand yet what they want to do, but they come here, they start to figure out what they want to do, and they start to get the skills so they can do it. And what could be more, from my perspective, what could be more satisfying and rewarding than that?
Thank you very much, Professor Egger. Just one last question. If, as a student, if we want to give back to the community, how do you think we can do that right now? Apart from becoming a professor eventually, how do you think students can give back to the community other than just profit making, like for big firms?
The first thing that comes to mind is that there are many things you can do within a corporation that in no way conflict with the financial goals of the corporation that make for a better world. One is to promote diversity and tolerance within the organization. In other words, when you see bias in hiring or you see prejudice even, to resist it as an individual, to be sure when you do interviewing and hiring to find non-traditional candidates, people who maybe don't have the conventional backgrounds, and seek them out and promote them. Promoting that value is something that every MEM student can do. Our MEM students embody that value.
That's true.
Another thing MEM students can do is help those who come behind you come back to MEM, come and visit, tell students about your experiences. If they're having trouble finding a job, give them a pep talk, encourage them. Say, look, I found a job, it's possible, don't give up. And, but also, even more, encourage your company to hire MEM students. and do an excellent job so that they think, oh, MEM is a great place to find gifted people.
That would
right?
be a great start.
Yeah, and you know, for example, most companies have an interest in becoming more energy efficient, being more green, and those programs almost never have a net cost to the company. They usually end up saving money. So those are great things to get involved in. I've done quite a bit of research into like optimizing energy usage, and that was what our Data Fest weekend was this year, was using energy data to figure out better ways of, more efficient ways of heating and cooling and lighting buildings. There's almost always a way that you can do your job in a more environmentally sensitive way.
Okay.
And I think that's critically important and something that MEM students as engineers can have a lot of influence in their organizations.
Most certainly.
So is that enough ideas?
Yeah, that's enough. That's good for a start.
Okay, good.